What's up? Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Kasparian, and we have like a full night of awesome programming for you. Joining me on the Hour 1 panel, Nando Vila and Nomiki Konst.
Yes.
I'm here, back.
I'm so happy you're here. It's been a while, and I'm glad you're going to discuss these topics with us. We're going to talk about impeachment and everything. Lots of big news from Gordon Sondland's testimony. But the story that I'm actually looking forward to discussing with you guys the most is on Elizabeth Warren and some of her missteps recently on foreign policy. So I had been waiting for her to say stuff about her foreign policy positions. She has done so, and we'll do some analysis on that. But before we get to any of it, Nomiki, I want you to tell me a little bit about a project that you're working on. You founded something called Matriarch, and what is it, and how can people get involved?
Well, thank you for having me and for welcoming me back. So Matriarch, it's very exciting because it's been in the works for a couple of years now. It's a coalition of over 3 dozen women, almost 4 dozen at this point, activists, organizers, union organizers, former elected officials, current elected officials, all on the progressive side across the country who are unifying together to support progressive working class female candidates running for Congress on an economic justice platform, an intersectional economic justice platform. And we wanted to fill a space in the democratic organization ecosystem that was not being filled. You know, a lot of candidates, to get the attention of organizations, they have to raise $250,000, $300,000. That's not how it should be. That builds a system of rich people or people who have access to money. So we want to help these candidates early on, help them get media attention, help them with their organizing, staffing, all of the above, so that they can be viable, as they like to say, candidates and in their primaries or in the general elections.
I love this. I love this because there's a lot of organizing happening on the right. There's this infrastructure in place to help right-wing candidates, but I feel like the left has really dropped the ball on that, and you're seeing like organized movements with progressive candidates, and I love that you're helping them out. Because really, we were talking about this during the break, the way this system is set up really discourages people, good potential leaders, from running, right? Whether it's due to financial issues or fears of smearing opponents and attacks like that. So this is great. Where can people go to find more information?
So you can go to matriarchpac.com. We are raising money to help candidates. So if you can chip in whatever you can afford, from $1 to $5,000. Is
that the max?
That is the max you can take, and we will be building the infrastructure, the staffing, so that it's not just a candidate. When you're in office, you can raise money for your campaign when you're running for office, but you may not have the assistance when it comes to press. You may not have the assistance when it comes to policy advice. Most campaigns don't have policy advisors.
Right.
So we want to help candidates work through a lot of this early on, so that they have they're ready to go, when they're running, and then they can take on the big beasts, which of course is the corporate establishment.
So they don't have to go to the Center for American Progress for their policy advice.
Oof. Yeah,
said there.
Not good. Don't go there.
That's spot on.
Well done,
That's
Nomiki.
very good. That's very good.
You're building independent institutions on the left. So important.
Definitely.
That can actually wield power when we take it.
That's
very
right.
important.
And one more question for you, Nomiki. So let's say there is a female progressive who's thinking about running for office. How can they reach out to you?
Sure. So if you go to the website matriarchpac.com, you scroll down a little bit, there's a nominate a candidate. Some primaries are very far away, like in August, so there's still time for people to enter the race. Our nominations are open until December 1st. So if you want to get support for this election, have someone in your community nominate you, make a good case, and then we'll send you a questionnaire back. And we're going to be pacing out the endorsements. So obviously we have to raise money, so we're going to try with a few at the top that have primaries sooner and need the support earlier, and then hopefully we'll be able to support more candidates as we go.
I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, well, let's get to some of the news today. The impeachment investigation continues, and just when you think the testimony can't get any more damning against Donald Trump, you have what happened today with Gordon Sondland. So let's do it. Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, testified during the public hearing as part of the impeachment investigation. And remember, Sondland had previously given testimony in a closed-door hearing that made it appear as though maybe there was a defense that Republicans could rely on when it comes to Donald Trump and this very clear quid pro quo with the Ukrainian president. But today's testimony really did open the floodgates when it comes to Donald Trump's involvement, direct involvement in demanding investigations, and more importantly, who told government officials, including Gordon Sondland, to work with Giuliani in order to pursue these investigations? Without further ado, let's go to the first video.
Secretary Perry, Ambassador Volker, and I worked with Mr. Rudy Giuliani on Ukraine matters at the express direction of the President of the United States. We did not want to work with Mr. Giuliani. Simply put, we were playing the hand we were dealt. We all understood that if we refused to work with Mr. Giuliani, we would lose a very important opportunity to cement relations between the United States and Ukraine. So we followed the president's orders.
So again, that very last part is the most important, where he says we followed the president's orders. And if you see the headlines in response to his testimony today, oftentimes they'll be worded along the lines of Sondland decides to protect himself rather than the president, right? Which is what some Republicans were hoping he wouldn't do. Right. And so today his testimony again is very damning. It draws a direct connection between Donald Trump and the demands for these investigations.
We're at the point where it's every man for himself. And if you recall, because none of us were alive, during the Nixon impeachment, this is ultimately what got him. I mean, it wasn't even that he stepped down, he resigned before he could fully be impeached, perhaps to save the Republican Party. I'm sure there's many historians who would have different interpretations, but I personally think that's where we're gonna go. They're gonna end up to try to wrap this up as soon as possible so that they can make it into this, we have Senate elections, they wanna hold the Senate. If Donald Trump decides that he wants to step down, that's like a real hope there. After every man for himself, then maybe Mike Pence comes in and he establishes enough strength. That's just like, at this point conspiracy, but we're dealing with the Trump administration. We have no idea what's gonna happen. We have members of the administration who are stepping down, quitting, who are turning on him, and this testimony was explicitly clear and legally advised. That language was legally advised to protect him.
Well, let's go to a little more of that legally advised testimony. In this next clip, he throws Giuliani further down that bus or under that bus.
Although we disagreed with the need to involve Mr. Giuliani, at the time we did not believe that his role was improper. As I previously testified, if I had known of all of Mr. Giuliani's dealings or his associations with individuals, some of whom are now under criminal indictment, I personally would not have acquiesced to his participation. Still, given what we knew at the time, what we were asked to do did not appear to be wrong.
So remember, Sondland was not a government official before the Trump administration. He has absolutely no expertise in governing. The only expertise he has is giving a presidential candidate, or in the case of Donald Trump, someone who's about to be inaugurated, $1 million. And that's how he was chosen for the position of ambassador to the European Union. So I only mention that because when you have these individuals who have no expertise in what the laws are, what governing is, they're going to move forward with a legal request, which is exactly what happened with Trump's request to launch these investigations into the Bidens.
Yeah, it looks bad. Looks like they did the thing, right? I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think you think they did the crimes? I think they did the crimes.
They did the crimes.
They did it.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and also, you have to keep in mind that these traditionally the political appointments go to smaller, inconsequential, regions of the country, of the world. Countries that, like the Maldives, or places that, maybe great
wow.
places.
I look forward to all the tweets from the Maldivians.
Sorry, Maldivians, but your ambassador
Nomiki Konst
usually is
viciously anti-Maldives.
No, I'm just saying
but I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying.
Not the head of the EU, and specifically Ukraine. There's financial interest there, so I don't know what his connections are in terms of. That might be something an investigative reporter, if they haven't done so already, would be very interesting to see. Ambassador Sondland's connections to financial interests, natural gas. I mean, really, it seems like everything comes down to the Ukraine and natural gas and liquefied natural gas. So I'd be very curious to see why he, in particular, was put in charge of that role.
Oh, you know what? I haven't heard anyone with that take yet, and that's actually a really good point. So yeah, I think that he's realizing, look, the walls are caving in on me, and the main reason why he changed his testimony from the closed door hearing is because all those other government officials who testified against Trump did not corroborate what Gordon Sondland was saying, right? And so look, you're right, Nando. They did the thing. It's so obvious, and the evidence just keeps piling on.
Right there, they did it. It says it right there in black and white. They did the thing.
Hashtag.
And these are not, Democrats from the opposing party. These are and this individual that we're talking about right now, Gordon Sondland, is not a never Trumper. He gave Trump $1 million.
This guy's a hotel guy, hotel business like magnate who, classic dumb guy fashion, thought that he could enter respectful society by buying an ambassadorship to the EU because it sounds important to a guy like him, and he thinks he could get into the cool parties now. But
he thought it was going to be fun.
He thought it was going to be buckets of fun.
And it's
instead he has to do crimes with Giuliani. That sounds like a nightmare.
Well, let's quickly talk about the notion of a quid pro quo. As we all know, Republicans kept arguing there's no evidence of a quid pro quo, no quid pro quo. Trump keeps saying that there was no quid pro quo. But what did Gordon Sondland have to say about that?
I know that members of this committee frequently frame these complicated issues in the form of a simple question. Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes.
So he says there absolutely was a quid pro quo, and the testimony, even in his opening statement, was so damning that you have a Trump loyalist like Devin Nunes looking like
white in the face.
I mean, let's show the video and everyone can judge for themselves.
That concludes our 45 minutes. I now recognize Mr. Nunes. Oh, okay. Why don't we take a 5 or 10 minute break?
Thank you.
All right, so that was explosive testimony there.
Yeah, that's the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme. Dum, 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 dun, dun, dun,
Yes,
zoom in.
yes.
Na, 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 na.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Look, when you have the truth on your side, there's nothing more liberating than that, right? Just be an honest person. I mean, and that, by the way, that goes for Democrats as well. Acknowledge the fact that Hunter Biden working on that board was a bad idea. It was a conflict of interest and it didn't look good. And it's something that Republicans can, I think, in a very credible way, latch onto. And so why don't you undermine the power that they have by saying, you know what? Biden did make a bad decision. His son shouldn't have been on that board. But this is very different. That might have been an abuse of power or nepotism. In this case, we're talking about Trump trying to create an avenue for a foreign government to meddle in our elections. Okay?
Well, I think ultimately, what we were just saying about the natural gas, that's really what there's the fight out in front about Russia versus America and these interests, the oligarchs versus the American oligarchs. But what it really comes down to is Secretary Clinton was in a battle with Putin. Remember the Russian reset? Over natural gas, over exploring the Arctic for natural gas and oil. And the Ukraine, has a pipeline there. It's a key part of this. And the EU, of course, has banned natural gas, has taken a big stand on this issue. And the less unified the EU is, including the UK, the more Putin has a stake in this. And so I think the Democrats, from their perspective, that would uncover, who really wants to have this territory and our own conflicts. I'm not saying what Putin was doing was right or wrong, or there's this Russian conspiracy. I'm saying that the Ukraine, this is all about natural gas assets. That's what Barista, or whatever the organization is.
Burisma.
Barista, like AOC. She was involved in it somehow too. Okay, so they did the thing. Let's game it out. They did the thing. The testimony from Gordon Sondland says he did the thing. Let's game this out. What happens?
Yeah. Well, I think that he's going to be impeached in the House, and that's what the House does, right? But that doesn't mean that Trump is going to be removed from office. Then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate gets to decide whether they're going to convict Trump on the articles of impeachment. So really, I don't know how it's going to play out in the Senate. I know that everyone is already convinced that Republicans overwhelmingly are going to support Trump. But there are some cracks beginning to form because the evidence presented presented in this testimony, or in the various examples of testimony, show that Trump did it. It's clear. There's clear linkage of Trump to the calls for the investigation. He did freeze the military aid. So I don't know how it's going to play out in the Senate. Look, for me, this is not simply about like, I hate Trump and I want to get rid of him, right? For anyone who thinks that that should be the only motivating factor, you're wrong. Because that sets a terrible precedent. For me, it is about protecting our elections. It is about, more importantly, ensuring that a person in a position of power isn't above the law.
Yeah. Right.
And so senators, Republican senators, don't want to be on the record voting against convicting Trump. That's why they're so afraid of what's going on right now. I want them on that record because I want them to basically say, yeah, the president is above the law. He can go ahead and undermine our democracy by having a political or a foreign government launch a political investigation into his opponent.
And there was a sort of line that was out there before the impeachment thing that said, oh, you impeach Trump and you're only gonna rally his supporters more and make him more popular. But after 2016, 2015, those years, I've stopped trying to make political predictions. I have no idea how it's gonna play to the public. I stopped making those predictions a long time ago. It does look like Trump's numbers are down, so maybe this whole impeachment thing is probably
his loyal supporters are his loyal supporters. But I think what the Democrats have to be careful of here is if it does drag out, this is surface level testimony right now. If it was truly a court case, which it's not, and quid pro quo is not necessarily a legal battle that we're gonna be fighting. If it goes to the Senate, how deep are they gonna go? And once you go that deep, that's when Joe Biden's name and Hunter Biden are gonna be repeated over and over. Why was Hunter Biden on the board? What was the board doing? What was this really about? And of course, that's what Donald Trump wants because his entire motive was, it went back to that server. It went back to 2016. Grab that server that the Ukrainians had. It's this delicate balance that the Democrats, the establishment Democrats and the establishment Republicans, and their deep state, they're battling it out. But the populists, I think, are the ones that are going to win. So
maybe it's all for the best.
That's what I'm saying.
If it destroys Biden's campaign, that's a net positive.
And look, outside of political strategy and trying to predict what's going to be best for candidates, for me, it's just about
they did the bad thing and they should probably be punished.
Yeah, for me, that's what it's about.
It's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that, right? And I know people probably won't believe this, but I would feel the same way if it was a Democrat in office.
Yeah, of course. I 100% believe it.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly were not nice about Obama's wrongdoings when we were,
those stupid Democrats under the bus.
Let's bring up drones while we're here.
Yeah.
Can we weave that in, drones?
Obama's deportation policy, let's impeach him for that.
Well, that was definitely terrible policy and we called him out. And so that's the right thing to do, right? Someone in a position of power should be called out when they abuse that power. So I want to read just a few member comments in regard to this story. Gabby Marito writes in and says, I am 100% with Anna. If Democrats had any spine, they'd outflank Republicans and call Hunter Biden to testify, then turn to Nunes and Jordan and say, pick one, Jared or Ivanka. That is such a good point, right?
Both.
That's good.
Javanka.
Javanka. I know what Javanka Beckles is amazing.
I don't know who
So
that
don't want
is.
to loop her into that.
No, not her.
Council member from Northern California.
Gabby, thank you so much for your comment. And if you are not a member and you want to chime in on the stories as we cover them, just go to tyt.com/join. You can become a member. And not only do you get perks like this, you help to support the show. You help keep us independent. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have some more news on how Republicans are handling this damning testimony. Come right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Welcome back to TYT. Anna, Nando, and Nomiki with you. All right, I wanted to give you a quick update on some of our debate coverage tonight. There is a Democratic debate happening today in Georgia, and we will be providing some special coverage. So right after the main show, there will be a special video for you guys. featuring what went down during our rally in Atlanta. So make sure you check that out. You can watch it live at youtube.com/TYT. And then our main coverage for the debate will take place obviously on this channel. It's the 5th Democratic debate, and it will go live at 11 p.m. Eastern time, 8 p.m. Pacific. On the panel, we have John Idarola, Ida Rodriguez, myself, and J.R. Jackson.
Wow.
Woohoo!
So go to tyt.com/live to watch us live. It's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so a few TYT lives from Twitter. Mandy writes in and says, Sondland is spilling all the tea. He is just worried about himself, right? I mean, it's all selfish reasons. He's like, I can't be the only one lying up here.
Well, he's not gonna go to jail like those other goons. What I don't even know their names anymore.
I never get excited about the possibility of anyone going to jail. Like,
true.
You know, well, I mean, look, to be
Fame
fair.
is a jail. I'm kidding.
Wow, you know what, Anna, like you are a very, very enlightened person to say that.
I don't know if, no, you're getting me wrong. I don't like to get myself overly excited for something that might not happen.
Like
I'll be disappointed.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, got it.
I thought it was like a religious thing, like no one deserves that kind of punishment.
Oh no, I would love to see Trump in jail. Are you kidding me? That'd be awesome. Bernie Beats Trump writes in and says, I love Nomiki Konst's voice. I have it on, but I'm walking around the house. I find myself listening closer when Nomiki is talking. Love you too, Anna Kasparian and Nando Vila.
Well, that's all for the best. Don't listen when I speak. That's the most important thing you can do.
What do you say?
You're crazy.
Stop it.
All right, well, let's.
I hope you heard that. I said stop it to him.
Okay, so let's get to how Republicans are handling Sondland's testimony today. The impeachment investigation into Donald Trump is so disastrous for Trump that Republicans who are loyalists to him are having a difficult time figuring out how to defend him. Now, if you can recall, in the beginning, they would argue and just parrot what Trump says, that there's no quid pro quo, that there was no quid pro quo between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian president. But now things are changing because Gordon Sondland, the ambassador to the European Union, has testified and made it abundantly clear that there absolutely was a quid pro quo. And so let me give you the details on how Republicans are responding. When the claims first surfaced in a whistleblower complaint, remember, Republicans said that if true, they might be forced to consider impeachment. But that's off now, okay? It's gone from there is no quid pro quo to there's a quid pro quo, but not a pro, to even if there was a quid pro quo, it's not that bad. This is just how things are done. You can say it's bad, but it's not impeachable.
That sounds like a tongue twister, like how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a wood quid pro quo quod prud?
Yeah, and
that's good.
That was, I mean, it wasn't an easy graphic to read, but that's not a statement.
Nailed it.
That's not a statement from a journalist. That's a statement from a top GOP aide who spoke to the Washington Examiner on condition of anonymity. But let me give you some statements from actual lawmakers that it kind of displays or demonstrates this, right? So Representative Mike Conway says, asking people to do something in order to get the foreign aid, that's a relatively common occurrence with all of our foreign aid. You could say all of our foreign aid is quid pro quo.
Well, that's I love it when this is like a great thing about the Republican era in this like the Trump era basically is that they say the thing that they're not supposed to say out loud, they just say it out loud. And yes, it is true that the United States uses foreign aid as a sort of weapon to further its empire and all that stuff. It's not.
So first of all, I agree with you that it's problematic when they do that to benefit the empire, right? But they do it to benefit the empire. In this case with Trump, it's for his own personal political gain.
Obviously, but I'm saying like that he just said it like, well, you could argue that all of our foreign aid is like comes with strings attached, and like, yes, you could argue, and you should.
And all those weapons that are being used against us, we invested in a few years ago. I mean, we could talk about that too.
Yeah,
totally. And throughout the impeachment hearings, you actually do hear that come up, and they're very candid about that, about how it was very important for that military aid to get to Ukraine, not because the United States actually cares about the well-being of Ukraine, but because the United States wants to mitigate the power and influence of Russia.
Right.
And they're clear and honest about that. They're worried about how this affects US foreign policy, not how it affects Ukrainian policy.
Right. Well, I think that's also just, I mean, when you think about when in the early 80s, Reagan era foreign policy and I mean, that was how it was interpreted then. And then it really took the modern day Democratic Party, the establishment Democratic Party, to be like, no, we're about stabilizing the world and democratizing the world, which was all code for, we're not as brutal as they are, but we're still pretty brutal. We just don't advertise it.
Liberal interventionism.
That's the proper term.
Yeah.
So then you have Representative Tom Cole, again, another Republican saying of the quid pro quo, which is very clear now, it doesn't matter much anymore. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then David Drucker from the Washington Examiner writes, a House Republican estimated that even in the presence of a clear and unmistakable smoking gun, which we did get today, by the way, implicating Trump in a quid pro quo, there are maybe 10 GOP congressmen that would consider impeachment. Now, you could take that in two different ways. The way that I take it is, this is awesome. I mean, that's all you really need in the Senate, right? But I mean, actually, I don't know if they're probably talking about the House of Representatives. So in that case, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
God, it's so devastating how much they stand by Trump and how much they're willing to defend his behavior in this case.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to imagine the counterfactual of like this happening to a Democrat. Like say the Democrats had nominated some cartoonish goon, like, I don't know, whatever.
Mark, what's the big billionaire in Texas?
Mark Cuban.
Mark Cuban, yeah. That would be the guy.
And like something like this was going on, like how quickly would the Democratic Party like abandon him?
Oh, immediately. Are you kidding
Like
me?
at the first sign of trouble? Yeah.
I mean, look what Nancy Pelosi was very close with Katie Hill. And as soon as there was a little bit of what Nancy Pelosi referred to as a distraction, she pressured her to resign. So it's just, you're right. Democrats are spineless and they cower when it comes to any type of bullying from the opposite party. But with that said, I mean, this is how Republican lawmakers are responding to it. How is Trump trying to defend himself against Sondland's testimony? Well, it's confusing and it makes no sense, which you're about to see in the latest edition of Chopper Talk.
I just noticed one thing, and I would say that means it's all over. What do you want from Ukraine? He asks me, screaming, what do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories. This is Ambassador Sondland speaking to me. Just happened. To which I turned off the television. What do you want from Ukraine? I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories. What do you want? What do you want? It was a very short and abrupt conversation that he had with me. They said he was not in a good mood. I'm always in a good mood. I don't know what that is. He just said, now he's talking about what my response. So he's going, what do you want? What do you want? I hear all these theories. What do you want, right? And now, here's my response that he gave, just gave. Ready? You have the cameras rolling? I want nothing. That's what I want from Ukraine. That's what I said. I want nothing. I said it twice. But here's my response. Now, if you weren't fake news, you'd cover it properly. I say to the ambassador in response, I want nothing, I want nothing, I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky, President Zelensky, to do the right thing.
I want no
quid pro quo.
Yeah. So look, he is reading what the back and forth that Sondland testified about, right? I just want to note that it was all handwritten on his papers.
Amazing.
But he, of course, there's an example. That's what
I want no quid pro quo. Tell Zelensky
to do the right thing.
But what he did was he took a small portion of Sondland's testimony to make it appear as though, hey, this is all the evidence you need, there was no quid pro quo. But Sondland made it clear that even though Trump didn't explicitly say quid pro quo, or that he was pursuing this in order to get something in return politically, it was obvious. I think he used language like, 2 + 2 = 4. Right? Like it's obvious that what he was looking for and what he demanded was that politically charged investigation into his political opponent.
Donald Trump right now is probably being advised if he ever takes advice, that he has one job, and that is to make sure that his base still believes in him, because the Republican Party, those senators who are not going to turn on him, depend on that base to get elected.
That's true.
They're tied to him. They're tied to his insane popularity. And really, this is why it's so important that people around him start to drop like flies, because those senators that are going to be on the fence, that are in Utah or in New Mexico, states that are not, don't have strong Trump bases. They're the ones. They're the swing votes that are going to say, is it worth my integrity? Is it worth my career? Is it worth, the Republican Party to continue to back this guy when he's making decisions like this? So I think it's a distraction. That is all about like strong messaging to counter, lengthy testimony.
Yeah, definitely, and it's really not working, right? So you're right in saying like his base is his base. They're going to support him no matter what, but there are other policies that Trump has pursued that have hurt members of his base who are slowly starting to turn on him. So for instance, farmers in Kansas are like, this trade war is really hurting us, and we're not going to vote for him again. And so Mike Pompeo is thinking about leaving the White House and running for Senate in Kansas, but it's not an open and shut case anymore, because a lot of the voters there are not pleased with the Trump administration. So, but with that said, I do want to go to one other aspect of this story that I just find hilarious, and it's Trump's denials about whether he even knows Sondland. So. After Gordon Sondland gave damning testimony against Donald Trump, showing that Trump did directly ask him to pursue the investigations into the political opponent and that there was a quid pro quo, Trump has decided to defend himself in a really strange way, except it's not that strange. He does this with a lot of people in his own administration. Take a look.
Finally gets me. I don't know him very well. I have not spoken to him much. This is not a man I know well. Seems like a nice guy though, but I don't know him well. He was with other candidates. He actually supported other candidates, not me, came in late.
So what did Sondland say about his relationship with Trump during the public hearing? Well, let's take a look.
Well, he also testified that you confirmed to President Trump that you were in Ukraine at the time and that President Zelensky, quote, loves your ass, unquote. Do you recall saying that?
Yeah, it sounds like something I would say. That's how President Trump and I communicate, a lot of 4-letter words. In this case, 3-letter.
Seems
a
like
couple of guys.
Seems like Sondland and Trump knew each other well enough to talk to each other that way.
On a bus with Billy Bush, just he knew it was
That's how I talk to all my friends. Love your ass.
So if we were to believe Trump, that's the way that he and Sondland communicate when they don't even really know each other.
Yeah, it's the classic like mafia guy thing. Like, I don't even know him that well. He seems like a nice guy. Be ashamed if anything happened to him.
That was basically it.
Yeah. Donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration.
Yeah, to like book Ted Nugent at this inauguration that no one wanted to play in. Like that, the whole thing is just so. It's just such a show. I can't say it anymore on Young Turks, but yeah.
Yes, a show. It is a type of show.
I mean, it was only $1 million, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
$1 million here and there.
Forget about that.
He got the EU for $1 million. I mean, usually that goes for like 50.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, all right, why don't we take a break? When we come back, we're gonna switch gears and move on. I wanna talk about foreign policy, how Elizabeth Warren is weighing in on Venezuela and Bolivia. And then later, we will discuss a recent House hearing on private equity firms where, unsurprisingly, AOC came out on top. We'll be right back.